I'd say Pontiac really did steal Italy's thunder in taking that, because they applied it to a car that had much more mass appeal and mass accessibility, such that who can afford a Ferrari GTO?
The GTO Judge we've got here is a Ram Air 3 model. It's a 366 horse version.
Back then, Pontiac had its own powertrains, and they were super smooth running, super torquey.
If it was a Ram Air 4 car, it would probably run better. While on paper, it's only a 4 horsepower difference or so. There's a world of difference between a Ram Air 4 and a Ram Air 3.
Pontiac just really knocked it out of the park, and they did it from the very first year on forward.
Felt really good. The power steering feels good. Throttle response is good. You can kind of power through the corners. The only thing that's a little lacking are the tires, and you can really feel them roll over, and you can feel a lot of body roll on this car. This car is the shocker so far of the whole test in slalom. I can't believe a car this heavy, this car has air conditioning, would go through the pylons the way it did. The way the sway bars work on this car, it stayed fairly level. Nice handling car, and it shouldn't be. It just did. What are you going to say about a car with no power steering, that weighs this much, torsion bar front suspension, and a 2.4 barrel setup that you can't really modulate the throttle? Either you're in the one or you're into the both. Just not a fun car to drive on the slope. This car is exactly what you'd expect. Short wheelbase, light, nimble car. Went through the slalom very nicely.
Well, after 3 of 5 rounds, the Buick GS and the AMX do surprisingly well, taking the Buick to a first-place tie in the AMX all the way to 3rd. When we come back, we separate the men from the boys, and the quarter-mile runs begin.
Well, the next test is really straightforward. It's the quarter mile. We're going to just relax. We're going to start with the burnout to get the tires hot. Now, with street tires, you don't want to go into the water. You just want to go beside them, get them nice and warm. Then we're going to stage the car. Then we're going to launch the car, and then we're going to figure out what the ET is, the elapsed time. It's going to be somewhere in the 13 to 14 second range, and we're going to find out what the mile an hour is.
So when these yellow lights come on, Peter knows that he's got about 1.5 seconds before he has to leave. Now, if the red light goes on, he's going to remember that summer he spent in Amsterdam, and he could be sitting on the line for hours.
This car performed exactly like I'd expected. Easiest car to shift, nice and strong out of the hole, but compared to the other big block cars here, it just doesn't have the grunt at the top end. I mean, it's still pulling, but not pulling the same as the rest of them. Disappointed in the car, actually not in the car, in the clutch. On the first pass, the car worked pretty good. It bogged off the line. It's the only multi-carb car here that we're running. The second and third pass, I had to stop power shifting in the higher gear, the 3/4 shift, slipping huge amounts. So this car, I mean, it did what it did, but it could go faster, just we need a new clutch. 1970, the gloves were definitely off. And what Chevy produced then with the Chevelle, the SS, the LS6 would never be duplicated again. It was the only year they had a 450 horsepower motor in a production car. Pretty awesome. And it wasn't just a bunch of hype. That motor, the Mark IV, was the ultimate in big block performance out of Chevy. Of course, 4-bolt mains. It was already pre-drilled for an external oiling system for the guys real serious about racing. Steel cranks, steel rods, had 3/8 push rods, 7/16 rod bolts. I mean, it was a serious piece of equipment. Closed chamber heads that breathed phenomenal through two 19-inch intake valve. I mean, that's a big valve. Solid lifters, 520 lift, 316 duration out of the crate. 780 Holley on aluminum intake. It was the complete package, though. The car wasn't as heavy as it looked. Standard gear was a 331. You could opt for a 4:10 ratio. This one here comes with the turbo 400. Transmissions, of course, the M22 Muncie was the ultimate tranny, the rock crusher, and it sounded like it was doing just that. A lot of cars came equipped with M21s. What's ironic is a lot of these cars with sticks came with bench seats.
Throughout its history, Chevrolet's identified a lot of their special models with special codes and letters and things. SS comes to mind. Regular production option codes, RPO codes, are also very popular in Chevrolet lexicon. Z28 is probably the most famous. Of course, LS6 carries a lot of water as well. And if you think about the history of Chevrolet muscle, I don't think it gets any better, really, than the 70 LS6 Chevelle that combined everything that really signified the muscle car era. Cool styling, really big engine, lots of speed, lots of performance. It really sums up Chevrolet's involvement in the muscle car period really well.
I think it still is considered a king of the hill. There's a handful of cars that outpowered it, but those were very, very, a Z01 Camaro or power to weight ratio, the 427 Cobras. But now we're talking about cars that are yet even more exotic, more valuable, and more hard to come by today. So when you're really talking about muscle cars that you could walk into your factory showroom and order right up if you so have the inclination, then the LS6 really comes out as being the top of the heap.
Chevrolet did a pretty good job of making sure that you could order your LS6 however you wanted. Of course, you paid for it that way. This silver car behind us here is probably going to pay the price for having the tall gear and the automatic transmission.
Quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed in the LS6. For starters, I think it's got a 331 gear in this car. With the automatic, it just doesn't pull as hard as a lot of the other LS6s I've driven. First time I spun the tires, that was 100% my fault. Second time, I don't like the shift either in this thing. It's a turbo 400, and the governor is 100% stock. A lot of guys would rework that, so it's shifting kind of at the wrong RPM for drag racing. A little disappointed in this car.
Well, after the first three cars, it's the Chevelle, the only car down into the 13s, keeping in mind this is a very warm and humid day. When we come back, we'll run the rest of the cars through 1,320 feet. This portion of the Shootout is brought to you by NPD, taking the frustration out of restoration. Your source for quality products, great prices, huge in-stock inventories, and personal service.
Third one there, I tried heating up the tires a fair bit. I got them a little too hot. The thing kind of bogged after it bit in, and it rolled over on itself, so I think the best run is going to be the second one. That's the winner. Well, if mild was good, then wild would be great, and Oldsmobile took the lead on that. They had this dual snorkel hood scoop, which looked like two mailboxes stuck on the hood. They had a rear wing that was actually taken off the design of a Cessna that was at the Lansing Airport. The 455 HO, another one to join the club. Over 500 foot-pounds of torque, 380 horsepower. Keep in mind these torque numbers are at around 3,000 RPM. Again, just about off of idle, these things are